Hello, orators! Welcome back to yet another episode of Bak Bak Orators. Today we have a very special guest among us, Pranav Sundaresan. Pranav did his BA and PG in philosophy from Ashoka University and his master's in the philosophy of mind and cognitive sciences from University of Birmingham. And personally, he's one of the best guys that I've personally found to convey the most complex philosophical topics in the easiest of ways.
Glad to have you here, Pranav.
Thank you.
Starting off, just tell us about your journey of doing philosophy at Ashoka and then, pursuing a master's in the same at the University of Birmingham.
Well, my journey to philosophy is kind of different from a lot of people. So I did a couple of years of engineering. I did like computer science in school and, went through the entire rigmarole there. Did 2 years of engineering and it was miserable. I hated it. I hated studying, not that I hated studying engineering itself, but the environment of the college, the way the professors were teaching and just like the overall academic environment, it wasn't for me. Luckily my parents were incredibly supportive, still are. And they said, okay, I dropped out, joined Ashoka. And philosophy is fun, dude. Like, I don't know. I think mere second semester I took a course on aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
So I came into Ashoka wanting to do psychology or literature because I wanted to get into, counseling or therapy or, teach literature, become a writer, something like that. Get into journalism was one thing. Then I took this course on aesthetics and something about it just clicked. And I was like, okay, this is what I like studying. This is my field. I enjoy it a lot. And from there, I just went on into philosophy. And as for masters, I think I kind of gravitated towards philosophy of mind and cognitive science because it is this kind of fun interplay between neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, sociology, and all of these things. There's a lot of questions about consciousness and everything, and that's something I've always been very interested in. So I decided to apply to a bunch of universities. University of Birmingham was the best one that I got into, and I was like, yeah, chalo, let's go.
So, when you made the decision to come to Ashoka, so you were jumping from CS and engineering to initially you had philosophy and literature in mind, and and these are two completely different fields.
Yeah.
What was the reason? I can understand someone switching from, let's say, CS to electrical or say maths or physics, but from CS to psychology and literature.
So I was doing electronics and communication engineering in VIT, Vellore. So the reason I wanted to do that was I wanted to set up an audio design thing. So set up my own custom speakers, amplifiers, headphones, full sound boutique kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then I went in and I was like, okay, that's not happening. That's never happening. And yeah, like I said, I dropped out. I got back home and mom looks at me, right? And there's no, oh, you've lost so much weight. Oh, how are you doing? We missed you so much. Nothing like that. She looks at me, she's like, idiot, I told you to study arts. Turns back, continues cooking. And I'm like, I just entered the house and this is the first thing you're saying to me. So my parents always said I was more of not a fully artsy kid, but I always had this inclination towards liberal arts and humanities. I've always been a very voracious reader. I love reading. I used to write a lot. I don't as much now, but reading, writing, just general creative stuff was something I was very much involved in from a young age. My family is also an incredibly artistic family. Mom and dad are brilliant painters. They also sing regularly, and there's always music or painting, something going on at home. And growing up in that kind of environment, just always, you have arts as a thing at home. So at some point, when I got back home, and I was talking to them and saying, okay, ye karna hai, ye apply karna hai, ye wo. They're like, okay, we always told you to do arts. We wanted you to do arts in 11th and 12th. We wanted you to get into psychology, get into stuff like that. You chose computer science, which is your decision. That's fine. Abhi, great. Now you want to do arts. What do you want to study in that? That's basically the entire thing of why I shifted from engineering to liberal arts. It's I've always had this aptitude and interest towards science, but I've also had this thing towards art. and getting into philosophy of mind, or psychology for that thing, because I also do have a concentration in that. But those two fields have this really fun interplay between science and arts, where you're able to draw on the inspirations of science, draw on like whatever science has discovered and so on, in terms of like we discussed in class, brain states and everything, which parts of the brain are responsible for certain emotions, certain behaviors, so on and so forth. We're able to draw on that, and then also look at how certain aspects of art affect us. So why do we have audience responses? In a horror movie, why do you feel the same way the protagonist does? Why do you feel those emotions? So you're able to take those questions, take the evidence and the kind of stuff you learn from science, and kind of synthesize them into something really interesting. So it felt like that was the place for me, where I can take all these weird abstract things and like these weird fun connections I've had throughout my life, and finally crystallize them into like, okay, this is my field, this is something I'm interested in.
We live in India, as I'm sure all of us should know.
Yeah.
And I think our country is notorious for pumping out engineers, doctors, lawyers, or computer science engineers. The practical people.
Yeah.
And, before I came to Ashoka, I was hesitant to pursue physics because I thought CS would be more practical. And here I am choosing between STEM subjects and you jump from engineering to philosophy.
Yeah.
Right. And there's this impression that philosophy, is a useless degree, and that film majors, it's a useless degree because they can't get employed. There's no direct route to employment.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's true, because it's not a coincidence that philosophy majors have the highest LSAT scores, right? Philosophy teaches you how to argue and how to analyze arguments.
Yeah.
So with that said, there's still this running joke that philosophy is a useless degree. You can't get employed and all of that. So now that you've done a master's in philosophy, you've already done an undergraduate degree in that, what do you think of that sentiment in general?
Well, in some ways, I still have a running joke with my friends. Every couple of months they'll text. Every couple of every couple of weeks they'll text me, "Hey, here's my order." As in, I'm a fry cook.
So right.
Platter of fries,
yeah.
cheeseburger, pizza puff. So they send me that, and it's a nice running joke, because to some extent it is true. Philosophy is not traditionally employable. There's no direct placement paths. You don't have a lot of those comforts that maybe a STEM degree or a law degree, a BA in commerce, those stuff kind of, BA in Viscom. All of those things kind of give you a direct employment path, because there's already a field set out for them. There's an employability kind of thing set out for them.
Yeah.
But the fun thing about philosophy, or the interesting thing about how you can view philosophy as a way to apply for jobs, is that, like you said, it allows you, it gives you like this really good, or not good, but like this really powerful ability to think on the spot, critically analyze. You find all these connections between things that people normally wouldn't think of, and you synthesize them and come up with a plan. So it gives you all of these very, very marketable and usable skills in a corporate world. The only issue is, it's not a direct application. You actually have to go out of your way to learn how to apply those things.
Right.
So that's one aspect. The second is, the philosophy degree on its own is not as helpful in employment. However, a philosophy degree alongside, other skills that you have, if you put those two together, that's a really powerful combination. For example, you want to get into the creative industry. If you have a philosophy degree and you run a creation thing, maybe a podcast, maybe you run a YouTube channel, maybe you have your own Instagram creator page, whatever, right? But if you're able to combine these two and set out a niche for yourself, that itself is incredibly powerful, very marketable. You can look at companies and say, hey, while I have a philosophy degree, this is how I'm using it. This is how I can be a value add to your company, to your organization.
Yeah.
And these are the things I bring to the table
Yeah.
that other people may not have the same capabilities for, because it's not just the brute force or like the basic aspect of the work that you can do. You have the capabilities for organizational work, for management level work, for a lot of that. So it kind of depends on how you want to view the skills that you learn through a philosophy degree, how you're able to operationalize them, how you're able to put them into context in a corporate field. Yeah.
It basically becomes like a USP for you.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, you really have to work towards like building your own particular brand.
Yeah.
So, for example, there's like a few companies I did apply for before joining Ashoka, and I did get in.
Mm-hmm.
And the big reason is not the philosophy degree.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, we saw the philosophy degree, we were confused, and then we saw that you had a podcast earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, yeah. So the podcast is my creative
Mhm.
thing, and it
Mhm.
shows that I'm able to branch out and think about multiple things. I'm able to create content around those, and content that not, while it may not have been popular, it's
Mhm.
content that not many people would have thought of because of the avenues that me and my friend were discussing.
Mhm.
Things about, I think there was an episode on the future of food,
Mm-hmm.
which is, at some point it's going to be unsustainable for meat. So how do we transition from there?
Yeah.
Do we move to
Right.
insect farming? Do we move to, urban terraces? What do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And in that we were talking about how insect farming itself is more cruel than the meat industry.
Yeah.
And just stuff like that,
Right. So I feel like a lot of people who are getting into philosophy now and have that attitude that philosophy is unemployable, or I'm not going to gain the necessary skills I need
Yeah.
for employment. First of all, that's a misconception. But I think it's our duty that since we're coming to college to think of what a degree is going to give us.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of first years or even second years don't really know what they really want from college. Right.
Mhm.
And since you've already done 6 years of education, you've
Yeah.
mentored, I'm pretty sure, a lot of students as well. You're TFing right now.
Mhm.
So, what would you say, what's one thing people should know before pursuing a degree in philosophy, whether that be an undergraduate degree or
think-
undergraduate degree?
So I think philosophy is something everyone can study, everyone should learn a little bit about, but to
Mhm.
pursue it in an academic sense, to make it your major,
Mm-hmm.
it requires a certain level of not commitment really, but like you just need to have this kind of thing of like, oh, this clicks for me,
Mhm.
I don't really know how else to explain it, but
Mhm.
if the field clicks for you, there are so many ways you can make it work for you, but it's all about whether you have that interest towards the overall field of philosophy. Like while I've said like my interest is philosophy of mind and cognitive science, that doesn't preclude me from reading any other aspect of philosophy, because all of that stuff is interesting to me.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that this is like the most interesting thing to me,
Mhm.
Right.
right?
So explaining clicks, the meaning of the clicks is you can take it somehow as if like you're learning to ride a bicycle for the first time, and then you fall off. But then there comes this one moment when you just paddle and
Yeah,
the cycle
it
goes
goes.
through it.
Huh.
Yeah, something like that.
Sab kuch jamta hai ek saath.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're like, okay, no, this kind of like all fell into
Mhm.
the exact place it should have.
Mhm. So philosophy for me in general begin with stoicism, and I'm not an expert, but I was going through some tough times in my life, and I read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius
Yeah.
for the first time,
Brilliant book.
and things changed for me in a good way. Now, speaking with a philosophy graduate like yourself, what's one reason that you believe everyone should study philosophy? Perhaps not at the academia level and in general.
So this is actually the one line that got me into studying philosophy as an academic thing. It's one of my professors back in, I think second sem, third sem, and she said, so what is philosophy? Everyone kind of gave their own answers. She's like,
Mhm.
yeah, so all of your answers are correct.
Mhm.
Philosophy is just philosophia, the love of knowledge. That's all
Mhm.
it is. And the reason I kind of tell people to, kind of read up on it, just find out stuff that they like reading about. It doesn't need to be, philosophy of mind. You could have an interest in philosophy of ethics. You could have an interest in law, politics, whatever. There is a philosophy associated to that. And the reason I kind of encourage people to read that stuff is usually political science, economics, all of these like particular fields focus on obviously the real world implications, right? They look at theories, they look at case studies, they look at all of these things. Philosophy books kind of look at it from a more meta perspective in a sense, where it's not just the real life, it's not just the case studies, it's the theory itself. How does that affect how these things come into play itself? How do these real life case studies, how do these examples kind of manifest because of the theory itself?
Okay.
As an example. But in general, philosophy is it's just fun, and it gives you like gives you a different kind of look at certain subjects that you may not have thought of.
Yeah.
I don't know, for example, horror.
Explain.
For example, horror. So my master's thesis was on horror, And I was approaching it from the philosophy of mind perspective, which is why do we have the state of horror? Why do we have this mental state of horror? Right? Now most people, they would say, yeah, it's fear, it's a jump scare, blah blah blah. But that's not always the case. Bad horror movies are rife with jump scares, but they're bad for a reason.
Right.
They rely only on the jump scares. A good horror movie kind of forces you to feel alienated, disquiet. You're not sure of the environment you're in. You're not sure of the way the world works in the movies, the series you watch, right? So that's a mental state that's completely different from fear. And that's kind of like an analysis I went into that was only possible because I'm like, well, I'll read anything, whatever.
This is reminding me of the first time I watched Conjuring. I think I was alone at night and I was watching the damn thing. Okay, go ahead.
I think I scared my brother more after Conjuring 2 than the movie itself. So like we went to watch Conjuring 2. I came back and there was like a thunderstorm in Mumbai because it's lovely monsoon. And mom and dad have left, right? So me and my brother are sleeping, and he wakes up, turns around, and apparently I'm dead asleep, right? I have my eyes wide open and like this grin on my face, He looks at me, he's like, it's 2 a.m. I cannot handle this. And he just goes back to sleep. He wakes up in the morning, he's like, dude, I nearly had a panic attack last night because I saw your face like this. And it's just thunder outside. Oh, it's horrible, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm scarier than a horror movie.
Right. We've touched upon fiction, and you talked about how you wrote your thesis on horror. And we've talked off camera about Berserk, and I actually bought the first edition of the book. It was for 850 rupees.
Yeah.
I opened the book, it barely had any text, it had more illustrations.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, what's the value? It's just a book of illustrations. So why did I buy this book? And then I remember what you said. You talked a lot about its illustrations and how beautiful they are and how nuanced they get as the novels progressed. And I'm someone who does not come from an art background. I mean, I'm shit at anything artsy. So I just had a question for you. Like, what about illustrations in Berserk or just in general fascinates you about them?
So I've always been into comic books and manga. Like that's a thing I've had since I was maybe, I don't know, 6-7 years old. We used to go on like clearance sales and just buy up all the comic books we could. I grew up reading like Spider-Man, Venom, everything, right? And I think something about that just sticks with me. It might seem childish, but like it's just the kind of idealism that these heroes have, or for the lack of, or in another way, Berserk is not idealistic. It's this deep, dark, nihilistic, and brutal story.
Yes.
The opening pages are like, it just sets the tone for the rest of the story. But something about the way these things are depicted through the medium of animation is something the live action can't capture. It's why when you watch the old animated Lion King and Aladdin, you have the sense of wonder, the sense of magic that you don't have when you watch the new CGI remakes.
Yeah.
Right? Which, I mean, I'm not going to talk more about them, but it's that animation and hand-drawn images and all of these things, they allow us to play into our dreams, our imagination, our fantasies, and all of these other things we draw from the stories we've heard, the theologies and myths we kind of grow up with. And it kind of brings them all together into this really, I don't know, digestible thing for children to learn from. Because Spider-Man isn't just a fun superhero. You learn a lot about dealing with loss, coping with grief, finding out what your powers and your responsibilities are. Because the role of Spider-Man isn't that, it's this one guy elevated to some superhero thing. Is that any one of us has that power. Because he's just a regular college kid who then gets pushed to that. And throughout like the series, you see him broke, almost penniless, trying to like make his life work.
Right.
And it feels human. Similarly for Berserk, none of us are fighting monsters on a daily basis. We're not fighting sea gods or anything. But, the world feels bleak, absurd, and just like dark.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's fun to have a comic book that reflects that in this exaggerated fashion. Because you find some semblance of like, okay, this guy's still struggling on. Why can't I? So there's like small kind of messages you get. And on the other hand, I just love art. And again, like I said, I grew up in an artist family. I love colors. I love drawings, all of that. And I can spend hours just like poring over these comic books and, manga panels, because that's the kind of art I gravitate towards. Not much towards fine art, sadly.
So, what I have noticed and what you just said, and what I've personally experienced, like three things combining together, is that often people subconsciously connect with these fictional characters and their philosophical ideology. The most common examples that come to my mind, as you touched upon Spider-Man, is just like, even those when there is no hope, the guy will try. Shoot at the impossible.
Yeah.
Or say, when I was growing up, I used to watch Nobita from Doraemon, which taught me like what's wrong and what's right. Even though that guy had like a magic pocket robot in his like surroundings, and he was his damn good friend, but even though he was humble enough.
Yeah.
Or let's say the illustrations from Berserk that waves like these profound philosophical threads. These philosophical ideas from let's say comics or fictions or movies unknowingly affect our life in some ways. And when I read Elon Musk's biography, he talks about like certain philosophical ideas from space fiction that still inspires him to this day. So as a fan, do you see fiction, whether in Hollywood or manga like Berserk, as a medium of conveying and popularizing these complex philosophical concepts?
Yeah.
And if so, then how can someone like a normal person like me consciously channel that thing instead of doing it subconsciously?
Right. So yeah, I think fiction's honestly one of the most powerful mediums through which we can explore philosophy. It's brilliant. I think during the DSs I showed episodes of Love, Death, Robots. So those are short films based on sci-fi and all of that. But they delve into very, very profound philosophical questions about identity, consciousness, self. Similarly, there's movies like Her, which delve into the nature of what love is.
Yeah.
What does it mean to truly love someone and give yourself over, right? There are other movies, Batman, like The Dark Knight, for example. What does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to be a vigilante? What does it mean to try and do the right thing? And on the flip side, what does it mean to truly not care about anything? Because that's the counterpoint between Batman and Joker. He's order, chaos. This guy cares about life. This guy doesn't care at all. He's like, I'm just here for a good time, not a long time, right? But fiction is a really cool. It's a really fun lens through which we can explore these philosophical ideas. I think the one way to channel it consciously, though, is I think anytime something strikes at you, just be like, why? Just ask the questions, Like start asking those questions, and that itself is engaging in the discourse of philosophy. You watch something and you're like, okay, why does this make me feel this way? Why does this character act in this manner? Why is this setting used instead of something else? As these questions pop up, just like actually verbalize them to yourself instead of like hiding them back. Be like, okay, why? Let me think about it a little bit. It doesn't need to be long, but like
this sort of like connects back to the point of like having philosophy in everyday life.
Yeah, I mean that's all philosophy is. It's just you're asking questions and trying to learn. That's all. It's just the love of knowledge. Philosophia.
So looking ahead, Pranav, like what's on your horizon? Like any projects that our listener can look forward to, or any steps they can sort of like turn their passion into their projects, and taking inspiration from your journey. How can they incorporate what they love into their future plans?
I think, well, I mean, if you're talking about my future, I'm actually not particularly sure what's in store. Maybe I don't know, PhD applications, maybe an MBA. I don't know. That's 7-8 months in the future. Let me see what I can do until then. But in terms of channeling your passions, I think what always helps is having a couple of friends who also care about the same stuff you do. It's always fun to work on things together rather than alone. The reason I had a podcast was just so I could talk to one of my best friends on a regular basis. Like every couple of weeks, we just get on a Discord call for like 2-3 hours, just talk. And out of it, we'd maybe cut an hour or so as like the episode, whatever, put it up. We don't care. The rest of it was just us catching up. Which you don't get to do as easily when one guy's in the UK and the other guy's in India or otherwise. But yeah, it's always fun to have people around you who also care about the same things and are able to, if not share in them, they're able to appreciate that you care.
Mm-hmm.
Like my parents don't care for manga, they don't care for comics.
Uh-huh.
But when I told my dad I wanted to buy all 14 volumes of Berserk and each hardbound, each like leather-bound volume is like 2.5K,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
So each one is like that. And he looks at me and he's like, why? And then I'm like, dude, I love this thing.
Mhm.
I've been reading it since my first year.
Mhm.
And he's like, okay, fair.
Mhm.
That's it. That's all he said. He's like,
And he
okay,
buys
fair.
it.
Fair enough. He didn't buy it, but he's like, yeah, okay, once you earn enough, go for
Uh-huh.
it. I'm not going to ask you why.
Okay, makes sense.
Similarly, like my brother, he's into 3D design and art.
Mm-hmm.
And very often he has to buy plugins and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's necessary for him. He just
Yeah.
feels like, okay, I want this,
Uh-huh.
so I'm going to buy it.
Right.
Yeah.
So he buys it and dad's like, why? And he's like, I really like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's like people who appreciate, they need not share in the same thing. Dad doesn't care about that stuff as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, I don't think mom, dad, or my younger brother care about music or the kind of music I listen to the way I do. But they're like, yeah, we're happy that you're happy about it. We love that for you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
That's the phrase. Find people who, if they can't love the same thing as you, they're like, okay, we love that for you. We will support you in like pushing it forward. And that's always helpful.
Right.
Like having an environment that really fosters like your passion.
Mhm.
Like, okay, you care about this. Let's try and like help you
Mhm.
really put that into some kind of project.
Mhm.
That helps.
You drove home this like a really important point of like having the right people in your lives.
Yeah.
And I think this is like if what I feel personally, if there's anything that the audience can take away from this episode, just one thing, then it's having the right set of people in your life. And so like moving on to from the serious and that kind of stuff to, we'll move on to some fun and spicy stuff now.
Okay.
So we have this segment of the podcast that's called Short Takes, and it's gonna be short take questions that we're gonna ask you, and answer those questions without thinking.
Okay.
We'll move ahead with Vedant first.
Mhm.
Let's go.
So, for the viewers, Short Takes is just a really short answer segment, and Pranav is gonna answer whatever questions we ask in the shortest amount of time possible. The trolley problem. For those who don't know, Pranav should know this since he's done philosophy.
All right.
The trolley problem is just a thought experiment in ethics where, so there's a fictional scenario where an onlooker has the choice to save 5 people in danger of being hit by a trolley. So there's a track, there's a trolley, 5 people, and the trolley is going to hit them, and the 5 people are going to die. So that person can either choose to kill these 5 people, or he can press a button diverting the trolley to a separate track where there's only one person. Now, so what's the more ethical decision? Pranav, what would you
And
say?
you can't go out of the box to say, okay, we'll do this, we'll do
Yeah.
that.
Oh, I mean,
Mhm.
clearly press the button, kill the one person.
Mm-hmm.
Utilitarianism at its finest. It's just maximize the good. There are
Uh-huh.
5 people.
Uh-huh.
Now you want to modify the experiment and say, oh, those 5 are maybe like convicted felons or whatever. Okay, so there's still 5 human lives versus 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, makes sense.
It's kind of, yeah. The trolley problem is just always
Okay.
fun.
So,
I have another short segment.
okay,
Going off script
okay,
here.
Okay,
But-
okay, do
Go
it.
for it, go for it.
Pranav, if you could go back in time
Mhm.
to the 20th century, that is such a vague timeline, but yeah, would you kill baby Hitler?
Stewie did.
Ooh.
Stewie did.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't kill baby Hitler, but I'd try and like give him art tuition so he'd actually get into art school.
Studies philosophy.
Yeah, or maybe be like, hey, why don't you try your hand at philosophy?
He
You know?
did, and then he ended up with Nietzsche, and that's how World War started.
Well, I feel bad for Nietzsche, honestly.
Mhm.
Guy's such a great writer, and he got appropriated by the Nazis.
Oh, damn.
So-
Damn sad.
Moving on to the next question.
Yeah.
That was a pretty fun one, actually. So, is the meaning of life in the syllabus of Philosophy 101, or do you have to take an advanced course to unlock that achievement?
I don't think it's in any of the syllabi. You're not gonna find it there. So, okay, I mean, so while that is my answer, I think to explain it a little bit more seriously, I think meaning of life is, it's so personal to each like to everyone. You know, everyone has their own set of things that they value. Like for me, it's very clearly my family and my thing of like, I like reading, I like studying, I like doing certain things. And I just want to be able to do those things. And that's it. So that for me is my meaning of life. I don't need I mean, obviously, I'd love to be comfortable. I don't want to be enormously wealthy. I don't care about that. As long as I can live comfortably and I have savings for like a rough day, all of that stuff, I'm good. So that's my meaning of life.
Okay.
For some others, it's the aspiration of becoming incredibly wealthy so they can support their family, so they don't have to care ever. And that's absolutely fine. It's just you're never going to find a meaning of life anywhere in the syllabi.
Right.
Now, what life is, that may come down. That may be in the syllabus somewhere down the line.
Okay, so
Fair
moving on
enough.
to the next question, which is a really fun one actually. So if Socrates has an X account, okay, formerly Twitter.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
a fun story. I once purchased the Twitter premium membership and then it was renamed X. And my parents got an email, your son purchased the premium for X. And I was
They're
like,
like,
what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay, coming back to the question. So if Socrates had like a X account, and would he be banned for asking too many probing questions in the political sphere?
No, Socrates would be fine. It's Diogenes you have to worry about.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, he would get banned like day 2. He'd be like doxing people left, right, center.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the last segment of the podcast.
Mini
And
segment.
this is something really fun. We're going to do a diagnose and we're going to say one word and you'll say the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Job.
Less.
Ashoka.
Fun.
Campus accommodation.
All right.
Romantic partner.
Forever alone.
Holy shit.
Philosophy.
Everything.
So that was it, guys, for this episode. I think you loved it. I was like, so it's been a pleasure having you, Pranav.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, this has been fun.
And we can't wait to see how your journey unfolds in the future. And we'll probably have you in like season 7 or season 8 of Bak Bak Orators when we are alumni ourselves. So thank you.
That far down the line.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna go that far.
Okay.
Okay, we'll manage that out. So thank you for being a part of Bak Bak Orators.
Yeah, thank you for
and
having me.
signing out. Love you.
Thank you for watching.